every time. What? Hey, son. I think we got ourselves another one. Watch this. Okay, right about there.
Found it, boys. This is it. They got their own water. They got their own crops. They even got livestock. We can absolutely take them.
Roger that. Is there any signs of life? What about that farmer?
I haven't seen him in a day or two. Besides, it's just one guy. They don't have any tactical gear. Should be no problem.
Copy that. We'll meet him at sundown.
All right, I'll be waiting.
All right, boy. Cover up your little ears. It's gonna be a loud one. All right. There you are. Oh, God. Oh, that kicks more than a mule on mule day. All right, son, I got a job for you. I need you to take this here shovel, go down there, do the same thing we did with all the others. All right, you understand? I don't want any of that lip that you give your mother. Ain't gonna work with me. It's too damn bad. You go down there and you just keep digging until I tell you to stop. We good? All right, it's a good boy. Now get.
The internet will tell you if you don't have this specific gun in this configuration with the most expensive ammo, you're probably gonna die. If you're worried about keeping up with the Joneses on YouTube, don't. But today we're gonna talk about a new endeavor that SOCOM has embarked on and why you should or should not get into one. Now the MRGG-S, or Mid-Range Gas Gun Sniper System, is a 20-inch 6.5 Creedmoor meant to replace the infamous and venerable SR-25 from Knight's Armament. And while it has not yet fully replaced the Knight's rifle, the SOCOM contract awarded to both Geisley and LMT has certainly put that process into motion. And I don't know about you, but when a major league team like SOCOM signs a contract for a rifle like this, I instantly want one. But unless you're a collector of expensive and exotic firearms, you should be asking yourself a list of questions before you go buy. Questions like, am I able to justify this purchase to my wife? No, seriously, does it actually make sense to buy something like this, build it out, store it, train with it, get all of the ammo for it and all of the other accessories that are needed? Because let's be honest, there's no faster way to get your wife off of the preparedness train than to go blow money onto items that you aren't actually preparing with or make sense to your family. So you also have to take into account the fact that you are not the same team as SOCOM, and maybe there is a better purchase out there for you, and that purchase may cost more, it also may cost less. Also, what are the strengths and weaknesses of a platform like this? And finally, does a 20-inch mid-range gas gun actually have a place in the world of prepared civilians? All that and more, but first, we gotta tip a hat to those who make content like this possible. Folks, Patreon is only $5 a month. The sub button is free, but we have to also thank the people that make this kind of content really possible for you for free every single week. Guys, whenever people think about long-range shooting and hiding in the woods and being a sniper of some kind, a lot of people think about camouflage, and Wetworks is one of my favorite brands that is offering lightweight, made in America solutions for being able to blend in and hide in these both rural or urban areas. So as an example, their Wraith hood or their Summer Combat hoodie could both go on top of whether you have a plate carrier and all of your loadout gear that's on there, or if you're just wearing a flannel and a baseball hat, but you want to be able to throw a hood on, grab your rifle and go out, you have two really good options here. They also pack down really small and breathe really, really well. If you're curious about any of this stuff from Wetworks, check that link in the description. Next, we have Die Free Co. Now, Die Free Co. offers some pretty awesome solutions for your rifle or carbine, whatever it is that you're building out. But when I am shooting long-range guns, I very much prefer to have a sharp 90-degree grip angle. That just means that when I'm pulling the trigger to the rear, I don't have a funny angle with my wrist, and it's just something that I much prefer, whether it's going onto a bolt gun or a gas gun. Unfortunately, the MRGG from LMT does not take these kinds of grips, But I am able to put this Kung Fu grip onto the SIG Cross, which we'll talk about here more in a few minutes. If you're curious about Dichotomy, link is in the description. And lastly, zero gravity. Now, if you are mounting a either quality optic or low quality optic, you still want to give that optic the best chance of holding zero. And if you're like me and you want to be able to run a top dot and get good clearance over your top turret, see the full window through your optic, then man, zero gravity is the way to go. They're very lightweight, made here in America, and I couldn't be happier with my mounts. I have, I think, 2 or 3 of them, and they've just been stellar since I got them. So thank you very much, Zero Gravity, Wetworks, and Dichotomy. With that, let's get back to the video. So we are not technically cloning a rifle for YouTube today, but it does put us into the ballpark of what the MRGG-S is trying to do. We do have a working relationship with LMT, and while there was no exchange of finances for a review on this gun, I did reach out to my buddy over there, and he was able to send out a 20-inch 6.5 barrel for this video. So let's define what this concept is being built out for SOCOM. A lot of the explanation actually starts with the name, mid-range gas gun sniper. Now clearly this is not meant to be an extreme long-range rifle, despite the fact that the 20-inch barrel does give us capability out to 1,600 yards. And you thought 600 yards was long range. Try adding another 1,000 yards to that, bucko. But this rifle is also intended to be capable of work inside of 50 or 100 yards. And now we start to see how much of a multi-tool this build really needs to be. With lower recoil, greater accuracy, higher muzzle velocity, less weight in the ammo, and also less cost per round, it's no wonder why SOCOM shifted from the 308 in an SR-25 to a 6.5 Creedmoor in an AR-10 platform. But we also need to talk about the last letter of this acronym, which is S. The S variant, again, 20-inch upper with semi-auto trigger, whereas the MRGG-A or Assaulter variant has a 14.5-inch barrel and 3-position safety if needed. And a lot of people may even wonder why you would shorten a barrel down to 14 inches on a precision caliber system like this. Everyone assumes that you're going to lose a ton of muzzle velocity, you're going to get less accuracy and all of that, but the truth is you really only lose about 5 to 6% muzzle velocity when you cut down that barrel to 14.5. Your max effective range goes from 1,600 yards on a 20-inch to 1,400 yards on a 14.5. Now I don't know about you, but cutting down the leverage, the weight, and the overall size only to lose 200 yards sounds well worth it to me. Now on the other hand, there is absolutely a time and a place for having higher speeds, better terminal ballistics, and so on a 20-inch, and that's why the S system still exists. We do plan on looking at the 14.5 down the road, but for now we have a 20-inch, and this is what we're going to be talking about today. But before we go too far, let's go back to yesterday on the range. Let's check some groups, build some dope, and shoot this thing out. Now, the MRGG contract is required to hold 1 MOA of accuracy, but they're still shooting for about a half an MOA. That's the goal at least. And in our testing, depending on how well I was shooting, how hot the gun was, we were getting between about 0.8 and 1 MOA. So at least this gun is inside of the range of what is still considered to be acceptable. But I did figure something out as I was shooting this suppressed. The gun, with that suppressor, with Hornady A-tips, does not like to run consistently. We were having enough problems that we had to stop shooting, we had to clear out the bore, punch a round out of it, and I do not blame the gun, the ammo, or the suppressor. But when the combination of everything was getting too hot, the A-tips were breaking off inside of the barrel as it was feeding from the magazine into the chamber, and long story short, it just highlighted another scenario where these AR-10s, they can have a lot of mass on that bolt closing to get the round out of your magazine and into your chamber. And when you are trying to stay precise and you are trying to get great effects down range, some of those small inconsistencies can have massive effects down range. Now, once we took the suppressor off and the gun was able to cool down a little bit, we went back to shooting and we did not have any more of those problems anymore. So we shot most of the day unsuppressed, which was kind of a bummer. But again, it really highlights that when you are running a heavy system like this and still trying to stay precise, it can take a lot of good science and a lot of good engineering to make sure that the system is running well altogether. And once we got this up and running, we shot it out to about 950 yards. That's as far as we could shoot that day. And I fell in love. The heavy gun, the low recoil, the 6.5 speeds was amazing, and it felt like a system that, man, everyone needs something like this. Now, this rifle does feel like a gun that everyone needs, but there could be some serious pitfalls when someone like me, just a regular guy, tries to justify a purchase like this. Now, first of all, SOCOM has a huge budget, and secondly, just like infantry, Marines, and cops, their needs are not the same as Special Operations Command. And I too have a smaller budget than SOCOM, and I have different needs than SOCOM. And because of that, I need to be awfully selective as to what I buy, train with, and build out. And honestly, I don't want to be the kind of person that owns a ton of guns and I don't train with any of them. They don't fit my needs, or I can't even afford to finish a build. So, a rifle like this could honestly land either way. Is it a gun that every civilian should have, or is it something that we should probably avoid? Let's talk about the MRGG and discuss if it's something that fulfills a need for a common man just like me. Now, for simplicity, we're going to be working with the idea that you don't have a long-range gun, and maybe you have a good fighting carbine, but that's it. So when you're looking at building out another gun, you have to ask yourself, do I have a complete fighting system already? If so, what is it actually incapable of? For me, I already have a good gun with common parts that shoots a common round, which is 5.56, and I can trade bits and pieces with my friends or buddies if need be. It can shoot from 5 all the way out to 500 yards, and it is my standard go-to build. I even have a well-built-out chest rig, and the rifle and chest rig and plate carrier can all sit by my bed in case there is a bump in the night. What it cannot do is deliver consistent, precise shots out to 1,000 yards because the lighter weight projectile is much more affected by wind. The slower muzzle velocity means that my rounds are transonic, they're not supersonic speed all the way out to 1,000. And finally, because my fighting rifle is not set up for tighter, super small groups. So I've identified that I have a good system, but it has a few gaps when it comes to long range. Now, I do believe that that full system, your go-to carbine, needs to be built out first, and then you can move on to the next things. So the next question is, what does long-range precision capability actually offer me? And the first thing that comes to mind is, for the common individual, actually hunting. It's not combat enemy at the gate style warfare, it's simply putting food on your table. And hunting game is a great goal, even if it's just for times of peace. Secondly would be area denial. If and when there is conflict and it actually comes to your doorstep, having a tool that can reach out and keep people away, let's say at 500 plus yards with a precision fire, is an amazing force multiplier. The funny thing is, most ARs are capable of doing that. It's just that not a whole ton of people take the time to learn how to do that with their own system. So almost a subcategory here would be training. It is easier to train yourself on precision shooting with a precision tool than with a subpar system. Because at the end of the day, as corny as it is, the gun is only as capable as the human behind it. And finally, it can't be overstated how important sniping or precision shooting is, even on a rapidly evolving battlefield. Now, to the military, PSD, or even law enforcement work, someone who can stay mobile, fast, lightweight, and consistently land hits well past 700 yards is often still employed alongside a direct action team of door kickers. And as a civilian, I do believe that having the skill set of mid to long range marksmanship is just as, if not more important than taking your 3rd or 4th or 5th CQB class. Now, a lot of this is theory, and trying to guess what hard times will come in the future can leave us stressed, anxious, broke, and even crazy. So don't go too far down the rabbit hole and think that you need a Connex box filled with every single gun known to man. But there's some context too. We just laid out how important it is for the average individual to have long-range precision capability, and then followed up by telling you that you don't need to go overboard. And here's where we kind of get into the dichotomy, Jocko.
Good.
Around a rifle kind of like this. So we touched on how great the MRGG is. We expressed to you that you should have a fighting carbine and a fighting system first, and then addressed how long-range capabilities can help you. But if we were to get a harder hitting, more accurate system, what do we want that platform to be in? Budget is always a huge factor, but that means that, well, it's different for every family. Weight needs to be a factor because if you're hunting, you don't want to carry around a super heavy rifle just for 1 or 2 shots. And also if you are, let's say, not hunting, then you may not always want to be actively moving with a long gun as your primary. Ammo is going to be a huge consideration, and I want to start by looking at the animals that live in my area. Now here in Tennessee, the biggest animals that we have is probably white-tailed deer. So a 6.5 is going to do just fine. Next is how the gun feeds ammo and how easy it will be to carry extra ammo on body. Finally is your end state goal. Do you want to be throwing thermal on there? Does it need a light? Does it need to be able to clip into a tripod? Do you want to have a sling? All of those considerations need to be thought about before you spring for a rifle. With all that being said, I have a question. Can't a bolt gun do all of this? All right, this side of the gun world that we kind of come from often looks at bolt guns as if they're just FUD guns, but stick with us here. There are some serious differences between a semi-auto system and a bolt action, but most of it comes down to 3 key things, which is budget, weight, and reliability. Let's start off with budget. So how does budget apply? Well, first, this is not my primary rifle, and I don't need to sink primary money into it. So if I can save, I will save. Then you have to think about, as if you were buying, as an example, a mode of transportation. You want your primary mode of transportation to be as reliable as possible, regardless if it's a car or a motorcycle, or honestly, even if it's a bicycle. If you choose to buy a secondary system, and you can afford something of equal or greater value than your daily driver, that's great. But I would also want to make sure that your primary mode of transportation or your primary gun was as complete as possible. I want a light, a laser, a sling, night vision capable optic, and so on and so on. Now, that step is done for my primary gun, so let's continue to move on. I want to be wise with my purchase, but I also want to make sure that I'm getting something that delivers capability beyond what my go-to carbine does. So I need something that is hard-hitting, does reach out to 1,000 yards, and ideally is a common round. And that's where bolt actions really start to come into play. Now, being that bolt guns have less moving parts, actually less parts altogether, it simply costs less to engineer, build, and mass produce while still keeping high tolerances and good consistency across the board. And this does translate into better results downrange until you start to get to that $3,000 to $4,000 price point on a gas gun. And you have to keep in mind that we're talking about shooting incredibly small groups. A good gas gun should be able to produce 0.5 to 1.5 MOA at 100 yards, depending on the ammo, whereas a bolt gun should be able to shoot 0.3 to 1 MOA. You just then have to ask, is that level of accuracy actually necessary? Now, it's worth saying that AR platforms, they are inherently accurate after all these years of engineering that's gone into it, especially when compared to something like an AK. But as mentioned, they are more difficult to make precise. There are more moving parts. The pressure on the handguard can start to cause rail deflection, and the bolt may not always lock up the same way. And that's not to say that they can't be accurate, but if you're looking into a precision system and you have limited funds, your chances are probably better with a bolt action rifle as opposed to a gas gun. Now, once we hit the price point of about, again, $2,500 to $4,000, that gas gun can be super accurate, but anything below that, and the bolt gun is simply going to be more precise consistently. Now, this concept can also be chased to the weight of the rifle. If you're looking for a lightweight build that can be carried up mountains for a long ways, that's very doable on a bolt gun, but it's a bit more of an undertaking on a gas gun. Now, this SIG Cross with suppressor, optic, bipod, and everything else comes in at about 13 pounds. And while it's not a super expensive rifle, both Drew and I shot these guns at a 2-day PRS match, and while they're super lightweight, they did great for us. Now, if you want a super heavy, very expensive bolt action, by all means, man, people do it with PRS all the time. Some of those guys are running 25 to 35 pound guns, and they really shoot. I mean, they shoot lights out. And that's nice if you want to soak up all of the recoil, but it's stupid if you want to try and hike around with it or do anything other than lift it out of your truck and set it down. Finally, another leg up on bolt guns is the fact that they are less prone to malfunctions. It's not true that they can't malfunction, but being that these things cycle via you are running the bolt, if you have to throw a suppressor on it and it's still not poorly lubed, it's probably gonna run just fine. On the other hand, a gas gun, like what I saw yesterday, will have a list of issues that could arise if you do put a suppressor on there, or if you change the ammo, or even if it's extremely cold and extremely hot, you can get different results. And yes, there are different gas settings that you can put onto a gas gun, but even still, that introduces another failure point. Additionally, if you are putting an adjustable gas block onto a gas gun, you're gonna see that reflected in the cost as well. So if you want a lighter, cheaper, more durable, long-range system, a bolt action still has to be considered. So with all those upsides to a bolt gun, what are we actually getting with a gasser? The answer is speed. So yesterday I shot both of these guns in a list of courses of fire that were meant to stress different things, from headshots only at 600 yards to how fast can I put rounds on a piece of steel at 600. And then I wrapped it all up by shooting from 300 to 900 yards just to see how fast I could actually get hits running a range out. And yes, it's not gonna be a surprise to any of you guys that a gas gun is going to be faster. Every drill that I shot, the gas gun was faster. But I also made a critical error at a moment that caused me to learn something, both about myself as well as the guns and how I think about them subconsciously almost. So when I was ranging a target before I was shooting for the sake of accuracy, headshots only, I ranged the wrong target. When I went to my Kestrel and I got my dope, I of course produced dope for that target, and when I went to go shoot for both of these guns, I had bad data. I was not inputting the correct elevation. The targets were a little bit closer than I thought, which meant that I had to solve a problem that I didn't see coming while I was shooting both of these. And I didn't figure out that I had ranged the wrong target until I had shot the second gun. But how did I solve the problem? I actually solved the problem with the gas gun by just pulling the trigger again. I wanted to just keep shooting and walk my rounds onto the target. I didn't know why at the time I was having that issue. I just kept shooting until I quickly got a hit. With the bolt gun, as I was shooting and realized something's not right here, I went to the optic, getting comfortable, making sure that I was level and slowing down, because it was probably just because it was more work to put another round in there. I subconsciously wanted to slow down with a bolt gun, whereas I subconsciously wanted to speed up and quickly get those hits as fast as I could with a gasser. And this could come back into play when we're talking about training, becoming a new shooter to long range. If you have the habit of, man, I'm missing and I gotta hurry up and I gotta get these hits because maybe there's a timer and I'm racing my buddies with a gas gun, I spent more ammo, but I think I got hits faster. With a bolt gun, I spent way less ammo, but I solved the problem by looking at my data and not taking more shots. There's two different ways to do it. And you could say, wow, you wasted way more ammo with your gas gun. At the end of the day, man, if you're hunting, yeah, that's a problem. That's not okay. If it is a two-way range, you could argue, well, you were suppressing the enemy while you were solving the issue and getting to the right solution. But if we ever had to take shots inside of 50 yards in rapid succession, you may as well just sling your bolt gun and go to a pistol. It's not meant for that kind of work. So if you want a GPR or general purpose rifle that can reach out to 1,000 yards, you really have to go with a gas gun. Now, if you're going with a gas gun, it's probably because you know you need to carry more ammo, and you're gonna have to consider how you're gonna do that too. And when it comes to the gear around long range, we don't have time to dive into all of the deep details around long range loadouts, but there are some serious enablers that will make a system like this very functional regardless what rifle you go with. The first is the optic, and I think everyone is aware of the fact that the optic is as big of a deal, if not more of a big deal, than the rifle itself. In fact, I'd rather have a $3,000 optic on a $1,000 rifle than the other way around. Good glass is a make or break on a precision rifle. Next would be a decent tripod and a good sand sock for some kind of stability. Stability in long range shooting is mandatory, especially if you're just learning how to get into this long range shooting stuff. And another reason that we need to be stable is because level matters. Getting your optic and your rifle level is going to be the difference between impacts or not at some of those greater distances. So whether it's MDT, Veil Solutions, flatline optics, just get a level of some kind. Lastly would be a ballistic solver, and it doesn't have to be a Kestrel. It could just be a free Hornady app on your phone, or AB Quantum. That app is amazing. But you need to have a way to find your firing solution. Then you can get creative as how are you going to carry all of this gear? Maybe it's in a small EDC pack. One of my favorites is from Vertex, or it could be a chest rig with a bag combined, a bino harness and a full chest rig that could also go on over your plate carrier. That's gonna be a solution to carry all of your needs. Now with all of these add-ons, we have to consider how much money do you want to spend on the gun? And again, if you only have $4,000 for the complete system, springing for $4,000 on just the rifle is not gonna be the play. You may consider spending $1,000 on the rifle and then building everything else around it so that you have money left over for those enablers. But we also have to talk about the MRGG as a primary. Out here in Tennessee, it's hard to find a stretch of space where I can clearly see past 700 yards. Even if it's just cleared farmland, there's so many rolling hills and then thick wood lines. But if I were to be living in Utah, Montana, Arizona, Nebraska, or any of those other states with just vast stretches of open land, having a semi-auto 6.5 might actually be the play. Not to mention the animals out there are bigger. The wind can get crazy, and having a heavier, faster round than 5.56 for my general purpose rifle, that may actually be the call. What I would want to do though is make sure that I have a supply chain, that I have a team and friends.
I don't have friends. I got family.
To support that choice. So if all of my friends were shooting 5.56 and 300 Win Mag, I don't want to be the odd guy out with a 6.5 Creedmoor. I would want to be able to trade ammunition as well as parts and accessories that go with that solution. So in conclusion, are we saying that you should not buy and build out, let's say $7,000-ish for an MRGG? Dude, that really depends on your needs. If you can and you have the budget for it, you also have to consider that you need to train in order to maximize the capability out of that gun. And then if all of that is the case, go for it, dude. But if you're like us and you have a long list of things that you're responsible for, it's okay to buy something less cool but more practical. And for us, a lightweight bolt action system is going to be the play as long as I have a good 5.56 carbine next to it as well, especially because there's a lot of stuff out there that calls for our attention, finances, and training. Now, this has been a super fun dive down into the MRGG platform, but we have to remind you guys to not stress about keeping up with the Joneses with a mode of transportation and night vision and thermal and the next gun and the next gun. Just because SOCOM made a huge purchase does not mean that it's going to be the right rifle for you. What it does mean though is that you can think critically about new toys and explore the idea of what are some of my own needs. Just remember, if you don't want to be a collector and you have a responsibility to train with those rifles and you hold yourself to that standard, then be selective what you buy, because it can be a huge commitment how much training is gonna need to go into whatever it is that you actually make as a purchase. All right, this is not on the script, but I am kind of curious. So SOCOM made this big jump from 308 to 6.5 Creedmoor, and I wonder what you guys think. Throw it in the comments section. Are we gonna see a shift from 5.56 and 308 to 6 ARC and 6.5 Creedmoor? Are we just gonna get these faster, flatter rounds that have better BC and they buck the wind better and everything else, and we're just gonna start to shift away? Is 5.56 going to die? I guess is a part of my question. Being that we're seeing, I don't want to say that 308 is dying, but 6.5 is pretty impressive. Is 5.56 next? Hit us up in the comments if you guys have questions about this build or any of the bolt guns that you've seen here on this episode or any of our other content. Patreon is where we go to answer all those questions first. We don't always get back to every email or every comment on YouTube, but Patreon, we do get back to those guys. So with that, guys, have a good weekend, and we'll see you next Saturday.
What do you mean, stop acting like this for the cameras, son? If those cameras go off, I'm gonna wear out your hide. And I'm gonna tell your mother what you did when she gets home from working at the saloon. Don't judge me, son. We all do what we can, but we have to put that food on the table. Don't you dare laugh, son. I'll split your wig sideways if I have to, and I'll say it was an accident, and every one of these parts will believe me. You'll wear that mark for the rest of your life, and everyone is going to know how you sassed your papa, how you sassed your daddy. You ain't a man yet. Now take this shovel, and you get on down there, and you know, having land and resources, it's like having a big pile of manure, and it just attracts the flies. Sometimes you got to be a fly swatter. You know, my granddaddy's pappy bought this land for $7 200 years ago. It's not something you'd understand, boy. But I tell you what, protecting this land at all costs, so which and why we're here. You got that?